The room went silent for a moment, the kind of silence that makes your heart skip. A group of people, thinking they were having the upper hand, laughed as red wine splashed across his crisp white shirt. He stood there, dripping, embarrassed, and seemingly powerless. But what they didn't know was that the man they were humiliating wasn't just anyone. He was the owner of the very company behind a $600 million deal that had everyone talking in the business world. From the outside, it looked like a simple act of arrogance, a moment meant to embarrass and assert dominance. But behind those sharp suits and loud laughs was a man whose patience and strategy had built an empire. Every smirk in the room masked the ticking clock of consequences that were about to unfold. They had no idea that this seemingly small moment would turn into something far bigger than anyone could imagine. As he stood there, collecting himself, the air buzzed with tension. People whispered about the deal, about the company, but no one suspected that the man they were mocking was the very reason they were all underestimating the stakes. The wine on his shirt wasn't just a stain, it was the beginning of a reckoning. What would he do next? How would the man who had been humiliated in front of everyone turn the tables on the very people who thought they held all the power? One thing was certain. This wasn't just an office story. It was about pride, strategy, and a lesson that would shock everyone involved. He retreated to a quiet corner of the room, letting the murmur of laughter fade behind him. In that moment, no one saw the calm calculation in his eyes. Years ago, he had started from scratch, investing every ounce of energy into building a company that now stood at the center of a $600 million deal. Every contract, every partnership, every late night had been a step toward a vision only he truly understood. And yet, here he was, standing in the middle of a room full of people who thought power came from appearances and arrogance. The deal itself was more than just numbers. It was the result of strategic moves, risky investments, and relationships carefully cultivated over years. Rumors about it had been swirling in the business world for months, and yet the people who had humiliated him had no idea they were laughing at the very man who controlled it all. Every glance, every word they had thrown, had underestimated his reach. He remembered the early days when small mistakes could have cost everything. He had learned quickly that patience and silence were as powerful as any sharp word or public confrontation. Now, the stakes were higher than ever. The $600 million deal was on the line, and one wrong move from the people in that room could trigger consequences none of them were prepared for. As he adjusted his suit and wiped the wine from his shirt, he felt the weight of the moment. Every eye in the room had dismissed him, and yet the story was far from over. The question lingered in the air: who would have the upper hand when the real power revealed itself? As the night wore on, the party continued around him, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. From across the room, he noticed subtle shifts in the behavior of the very people who had poured wine on him. Smiles that once seemed confident now carried a flicker of unease. Whispers started to circulate. Questions about the deal, the company, and the man they had humiliated. In those murmurs, he could hear the beginnings of doubt, an opening he hadn't even needed to create. Meanwhile, he couldn't ignore the other layer of tension that had been simmering for weeks. One of his closest allies, a trusted partner in the $600 million deal, had warned him that rivals in the industry were watching, waiting for a misstep. The humiliation tonight wasn't just personal. It was a test of perception, a challenge to see whether he could handle scrutiny and still protect the deal. Every glance, every smirk from those around him was part of a larger chess game he had barely begun to play. From a different angle, he also had to consider the media. If word of this incident got out, it could overshadow the negotiations, turning a strategic deal into a public spectacle. He thought of reporters, blogs, and social feeds already primed to sensationalize the story. That added pressure gnawed at him, yet fueled his resolve. And then there was the human side, the personal stakes, colleagues he trusted, employees who had invested their faith in him, and even family members who believed in the vision, all depended on him navigating this moment carefully. The wine on his shirt wasn't just a stain, it was a spark igniting multiple layers of conflict, each threatening to collide in ways no one in the room could foresee. He straightened his posture, took a slow breath, and scanned the room. The tension was electric, and one question hung heavier than all the rest. Who would make the first move, and how far woo?